How do you know if a book is divine or not? That's really the main question here today. The answer is, once you review the book, you don't have to finish it. If you read the first page, if you find human error in the first page, that moment this book is finished. You don't waste another minute on it. If you have extra time to waste, it's your choice. But as soon as you find a human error in a book, then you know 1,000,000%. You don't need two human errors. One, it's enough. You know that this book was not given by God. And if it was altered by people, therefore we can never rely on it. If it was given by God, the people who copy it or the people who transfer it interfere with the text of the book. Why? Because we find human errors. The original book of God cannot have any human errors. God cannot write in a book the Twin Towers collapse in Brooklyn. Because if it says it in a book, then we won't waste another minute on that book, because we cannot rely on a book if it doesn't know such an event where it took place, or all kinds of other events in history, and he gave us the false information about those events, then we cannot rely on a book. However, if we review the entire book and we don't find one mistake, now we know that there is a chance that the book is divine. But let me give you two examples. On the New Testament, almost in every chapter, you find many, many human errors. It says that the cave of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob is in the city of Shechem. And everyone knows in the city of Hebron. It cannot be that God doesn't know where Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob are buried. In Acts 7 in the New Testament, it says, Nablus, Shechem. Big human error. It says that Jacob went to Egypt with 75 people. But in the Torah it says 70. What happened to God? He doesn't remember what he wrote in part 1. Now in part 2 he became 75. Can we rely on such a book? There are many, many other examples. For instance, in the book of Matthew and on the book of Luke, they describe the genealogy of JC. They try to link him to King David, because in the Torah it's saying Messiah, son of David. There's only one problem. In a book of Matthew, it describes 42 generations. In the book of Luke, 27 generations. What happened? God doesn't remember who gave birth to who. Completely different genealogy, more than 15 mistakes, different names, complete different names, different orders. It cannot be that both genealogy is correct. When we read in the Torah that Abraham gave birth to Isaac, and Isaac to Jacob, and Jacob to Levi, so we have a right order over here. If we read in another book that Levi gave birth to Abraham, and Abraham gave birth to John, and John gave birth to Luke, then how can we rely on such a book? It describes two different genealogy for the same human being. Obviously, it's not only human errors, it's human errors in a very, very low level. Some human errors is very hard to detect. The human errors that the New Testament has, every little kid in first grade already would know right away it's a mistake, it's not from God. Let's talk about the Quran. In these days, the whole world is speaking about it in this generation. The Quran had a meeting between Haman and Pharaoh. Haman and Pharaoh had a meeting how to stop the God of the Jews. Why? The writer of the Quran agreed that the Torah described Haman as a wicked person and Pharaoh as a wicked king. So he decided to create a fairy tale. What was the fairy tale? That both of them had a meeting and they want to go up to build a tower to go and fight against the God of the Jews. The only one problem here is that Haman is about 1,000 years after the last Pharaoh died. So Haman and Pharaoh could never have a meeting. Maybe they can meet in hell, but in reality they could never meet. Why? Because there's 1,000 years difference between one to another. And in the Quran, it describes that they met. So we see right away that the one who wrote that book made a critical mistake. There's other mistakes in the Quran. According to the Quran, do you know who the uncle of JC is? According to the Quran, who is the uncle of JC? You'll never believe that. Aaron and Moshe. Moses and Aaron are the uncles of JC. Why? Because the Quran knew that in the New Testament it says that Mary is the mother of JC. Mary, it's Miriam in Hebrew. And they read in the Torah that Miriam's brothers are Moses and Aaron. But there's only one difference. It's two different Miriams. The Miriam, the sister of Moshe and Aaron, she lived 1,300 years before the Miriam, the mother of Jesse. They were both Jewish women. One was very righteous, one was very wicked. Two different women, two complete different women, 1,300 years apart from each other, but the Quran mixed between them and turned them into one, and therefore the Quran made Moses and Aaron the uncles of Jesse that lived 1,300 years later. This is the book that in the name of this book close to 2 billion people willing to kill the rest of the world. And if you review the books, there's hundreds of other mistakes. So the answer is, are we the Jews that received the Torah from God also have such ridiculous mistakes in our book or not? The answer is, find me the first mistake. We'll make a deal. You find the first mistake in the Torah, you have the 5 books of Moses, Bereshit, Shmot, Vayikra, Bamidbar, Dvarim, in English, Genesis, Exodus, Leviticus, Numbers, and Deuteronomy. You check all those 5 books. Not only you do not find any human errors, you find that the answer to any question you had and you may have, it's in the book.